Yeah, I've just pressed the button and I'll tell you when it's live.
Thanks a lot.
And it's live, thank you, Chair.
Welcome to everyone to this Cabinet meeting on the 11th of February 2021. So this virtual meeting is being live streamed as a public meeting. It will also be recorded and the recording is subsequently made available via the Council's website. In addition, under the Local Authorities Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information England Regulation 2012, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or recordings is not under the Council's control. Please note that members of the public viewing the meeting via the live stream can only see the person who is speaking. Also, that it takes a second or two for Zoom to switch views. Just pause before speaking if that's okay. Participants should also ensure that their microphone is muted when they are not speaking so that we don't pick up any background noise. So first off, I'm going to confirm all of those who are present at the meeting. I'm going to start with Cabinet colleagues and then work my way through guests and officers as well. So first, I'm going to ask you whether you can see and hear the proceedings. So Councillor Berkeley.
Good evening, Leader. Yes, I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Bailey.
Good evening, Leader. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Boker.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Harper-Davies.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, Leader, thank you. I can see and hear proceedings.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Mercer.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Poland.
Everyone, I can see and hear proceedings.
You're a little bit faint, Councillor Poland. Nope. Okay. You might not need to have another go with your microphone when we talk to you. I heard you as a whisper, but you may need to shout. Okay. So, Councillor Ratway.
Good evening, Leader. Yes, I can see and hear the proceedings.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Councillor Rawlings. Nope. Councillor Rawlings couldn't hear anything. Councillor Rawlings is about to throw his computer out the window. I will.
I can see and hear proceedings, Leader.
Excellent. Right, we can hear you with the headphone on. Good. Excellent. So and that leaves Councillor Smitovich.
Yes, Leader, I can see and hear.
You see, at least there's one person on the Cabinet who knows how to use IT. That's what I like to see, Margaret. Thank you. Okay. No right. So. Thank you very much to Cabinet colleagues. We're now going to go through the officers and just check that you can also see and hear what's happening. So I'll start with Rob Mitchell, who's our Chief Exec.
Hello, Leader. Yes, thank you. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you very much. Simon Jackson, who's our Strategic Director, Environment and Corporate Services and Section 151 Officer.
Thank you, Leader. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you very much. Adrian Ward, who's our Head of Strategic Support and Monitoring Officer.
Thank you, Leader. I can see and hear the meeting.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Eileen Mallon, who's our Strategic Director, Community Planning and Housing.
Good evening, Leader. Yes, thank you. I can see and hear.
Thank you very much. Justin Henry, our Strategic Director, Commercial Development, Assets and Leisure.
Thank you, Leader. I can both see and hear.
Thank you very much. Leslie Tanzi, Head of Financial Services.
Thank you, Leader. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Leslie. Peter Oliver, Head of Landlord Services.
Thank you, Leader. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you very much, Peter. Helen Gresson, Organisational Development Manager.
Thank you, Leader. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you very much, Helen. Karen Widdowson, I know you're there, but if you could just confirm, Democratic Services Manager.
Thank you. I can both see and hear proceedings and I'm live streaming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. And then finally, Laura Strong, a Democratic Services Officer, making sure that we do everything right.
Thank you, Leader. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you very much, Laura. And then finally, we have two further councillors here and also a guest who's our Chair of Housing Management Advisory Board. So I'm going to start by asking Councillor Hadji Nicolai whether you can actually, here is your chair of the budget scrutiny panel. So can you hear and see us?
Thank you, Leader. I can hear and see everything. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Seaton, who's our chair of Scrutiny Commission.
Good evening. I can see and hear proceedings. Thank you.
Loud and clear. Thank you very much, Councillor. And then finally, Trish Edwards, who's our chair of Housing Management Advisory Board. Trish, good evening.
Good evening. Yes, thank you. I can hear and see proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trish. Right, that's excellent. We've done the formalities, so that's good. So first off, we have no apologies, which is item 1. Item 2, disclosure of pecuniary and personal interest. Can I ask if anyone has any disclosures that need to be made, whether they can actually stick a hand up, the electronic hand rather than the physical hand? Okay, there are no electronic hands going up, so that's good. Item 3, leaders and announcements. I have no announcements this evening, so that means that we're on to item 4, which are the minutes of the previous meeting. So I'm going to ask all of the cabinet members again, whether you could verbally confirm that you are content to approve the minutes of the previous meeting as a correct record. So I am content to approve. Councillor Barclay.
I'm content, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
I'm content, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Boker.
I'm content, Leader.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harper-Davies.
Happy with the minutes, Leader.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mercer.
Content to approve, Leader.
Thank you very much. Councillor Poland. You're completely silent, Councillor Poland. Have you a headset or anything that you could wear? I could hear you for a fraction of a second then. Do you want to have one last go of unmuting yourself and seeing what happens? Okay.
Take it that's no better.
Oh no, that's perfect. We can hear you. Yeah, there we go. Fantastic.
You know, this is actually a different computer to the one I had before Christmas with all the trouble.
Well, there you go. Well, are you content anyway?
I am content. Yeah.
Excellent. we'll leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. Okay. Thank you very much. So, Councillor Ratway, are you okay? Where are you? There you go.
Happy to approve the minutes.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Councillor Rollings.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Consent to approve the minutes.
Excellent. And then finally, Councillor Smitovich.
Yes, happy to agree the minutes, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So that's everyone. So that's good. Okay, we now move on to item 5, which question under Cabinet Procedure 10.7. No questions have been submitted, which means we're now on to the main part of the meeting, which is great. So we're on to item 6, which is the Budget Scrutiny Panel. So Councillor Hadji Nicolai, you're here as the Chair of Budget Scrutiny Panel. I'm going to ask you to present the Scrutiny Panel's recommendations to Cabinet. We'll then have an opportunity to ask any questions of clarity of the report, and then we'll move on at that point to discuss the report itself. So, Councillor, over to you.
Thank you, Leader, and good evening, everyone. To start with, I would like to say a very big thank you to all the members of the panel, the council officers, and Mrs. Conway and Mrs. Widdowson for their enormous contribution. We had 3 meetings, one in September, one in December, one in January, and we considered the Budget Scrutiny Report 1920, the Revised Budget 2021, Revised Capital Plan 2023, and the Draft Budget 21-22. Overall, we noticed there is a huge commitment towards the science and innovation zone, the Townwood campus and the town deal, and we noticed actually the pressures coming with the pandemic on the service provision. We notice the need to increase the council tax. I will try to be as brief as I can, and I will go straight to the recommendations. There are 8 of them. I will start with recommendation 1. The income from commercial investments should be monitored and reported by the Audit Committee and/or the Scrutiny Commission on a monthly basis, since the income is crucial for maintaining safe and appropriate level of reserves. The officers have recommended for technical issues this report to be submitted to the Audit Committee and/or the Scrutiny Commission on a quarterly basis. Recommendation 2. An analysis of potential austerity reductions over a 5-year period may help in replanning local services. The officers have responded that the latest version of the medium-term financial strategy, the MTFS, considers future funding prospects. Unfortunately, these are extremely unclear at this moment in time for obvious reasons. This suggestion has been noted. Recommendation number 3, there should be recognition of the highly volatile situation currently being experienced with regard to the financial situation of the Council. In the 1920 budget, there were concerns that underspend was built into the budget as a requirement for balancing the budget. Under the current circumstances generated by the COVID outbreak, this may not be a sustainable strategic element to balance the budget. The response by the officers is that they do acknowledge that this is a much preferred approach in budget settings, and in the future, the budget will be much more specific in savings and income generation. So this recommendation is also noted. Recommendation number 4, the Council needs to better understand what financial stresses and will trigger action regarding the performance of the 21-22 budget. The officers have responded that the key financial stresses will be the future levels of government funding and also the progression of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the Council's income and expenditure and the wider economic health of the borough. So this recommendation is also noted. Recommendation number 5, currently there is not an easy way to estimate savings which have been made directly as a result of the scrutiny work over recent years. Efforts towards providing metrics on committees and panels' efficiency may be a developmental need. The officers have acknowledged there is no such record, and there is a recommendation by the officers that the Scrutiny Commission may consider maintaining such a record. Recommendation number 6, in light of the 413K overspend in building control fees, as set out on page 15 of the Outer General Fund, there should be an active and far-reaching advertising campaign to promote the building control service at Chelmsford Borough Council. The officers have responded that the Cabinet has resolved to accept the delegation of the Northwest Leicestershire Building Control Service, and this new joint service was launched on the 4th of January 2021. This new service will define the marketing strategy, service plan, and communication strategy. Recommendation number 7, in future years, it should be helpful for the panel to be provided with breakdowns of overall numbers. Not only this would give to the panel a great understanding, but also we are going to avoid lengthy conversations and questions. The response by the officers is that additional detail will be provided where it is appropriate, but also they have highlighted the issue about staffing restructures. Recommendation number 8, the panel considered the continuity in the budget scrutiny panel membership, and the panel feels that it may be necessary to somehow prolong the service in this panel in order to get to grips with the council finance, which is pretty complex and difficult. The officers have recommended that this should be considered by the Scrutiny Commission. This is the final recommendation, but I feel that I take the opportunity for the sake of openness and transparency and for the record to mention that there were some strong feelings and opinions as regards the structure of the scrutiny process. The relevant recommendation is taken up by the Scrutiny Commission, and the Scrutiny Commission will discuss this issue in March 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, I'm going to ask whether there are any questions of clarity that anyone wishes to ask. Okay, I'm looking for any hands up. There aren't any hands up. Okay, look, Councillor, thank you very much for the presentation. Also, absolutely appreciate, I know there were a number of meetings to look over the budget and a huge amount of discussion over those meetings. Thank you very much for doing that. Please pass on our thanks from Cabinet for the work that your committee and you in particular have done for over the last few months. I think you appreciate the pressures that the council's under, in particular the budget, from the work that you've done. So we now hopefully have an opportunity to discuss any of the points that have come up with the officers and take note of the comments that you've raised. So thank you very much for that indeed. Okay, so I'm now going to invite Simon Jackson, who's the Strategic Director of Environmental and Corporate Services, to assist with the report. I'm going to start by asking Councillor Berkeley to briefly open up discussions and respond to some of the points that have been raised. Yeah. So, Councillor Berkeley.
Thank you, Leader. Certainly, the work of the budget scrutiny panel was far-ranging and very wide and deep. I think it's. I think Leon has very much indicated what the pre-seed version is, and what we've taken very much into consideration what he's actually said, his concerns about the value added by the scrutiny process, and that's something that the scrutiny commission will take up in March. I think the discussions that we had were quite long and far-ranging, and I think there's a genuine feeling that the budget scrutiny panel would like to gain experience by, as far as possible, keeping the same constituents on it. It certainly gave me great food for thought and gave us plenty of ideas. But I'll leave it there, because you've seen the background papers, you've seen a wide range of discussions that went on in the 3 meetings, and I would just add my thanks to Leon and the panel for their work and the assistance it's given us in focusing our thoughts into these 8 recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Berkeley. Before asking for any questions, Simon Jackson, is there anything else that you wish to add?
No, I don't think so, Leader. I think as both the chair of the panel and Councillor Berkeley have said, the discussions were very wide-ranging. I think we did get to have a lot of discussion about the volatility and the challenges we face. Some of those we may touch on if we in the subsequent reports around the budget and the MTFS. But I think the report and those comments summarise where the budget scrutiny panel got very adequately. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, can I ask whether there are any questions or any points that anyone wishes to ask in relation to the panel's report? No, it was a pretty thorough report, I have to say, so that's useful. Okay, I'm going to go back to, in that case, Councillor Berkeley, whether you can summarise and then move the officer recommendations. Yeah.
Okay, I think the chair of the panel has been through the report in great detail. I think I would like to propose that we, in respect of the 8 points that we recommend acceptance of the officer recommendation in all 8 points.
Okay, thank you very much. So can I invite Councillor Poland to second that?
Very happy to second.
Okay, thank you very much. So we have a recommendation and we have a seconder. So I'm now going to ask everyone to verbally vote for, against, or otherwise. So I start by voting for. Councillor Berkeley.
I'm for, Leader.
Councillor Bailey.
For, Leader.
Councillor Boker.
For, Leader.
Thank you. Councillor Harper Davies.
For.
Councillor Mercer,
For, Leader.
Councillor Poland,
For, Leader.
Councillor Ratway,
For, Leader.
Councillor Rawlings,
For, Leader.
and then finally Councillor Sminovich.
For, Leader.
Okay, that's everyone in favour. Thank you very much for that. We now move on to item 7, which is the general fund and HRA revenue budgets and council tax for 2020-21, and also the medium-term financial strategy for 21-24. So Simon Jackson is here to support, along with Leslie Tansey, and opportunity for questions after Councillor Berkeley. We take the report as read, of course, but Councillor Berkeley, if you'd like to summarise and lead into the questions.
Yeah, we've worked very hard on this budget. We've made savings of over 2 million in the budget already. A lot of that is offset by some one-off pressures. I think the bottom line is that we're using £830,000 worth of reserves this year. The major challenges we face are that in the next 2 years of the medium-term financial strategy, the amount of funding we're going to receive from central government remains uncertain. We are very certain that the next 12 months with some of the things that we've had to deal with over the last 12 months and the pressures that we've experienced and the way that we've managed to maintain services. It's certainly this time last year, if you told me the sort of year we were going to have and where we would be financially, I wouldn't have been able to say that we'd have been as well off as we are now. That doesn't mean we don't face challenges going ahead, but it is a sound budget. I think given the level of savings that we've achieved, and there's no doubt we'll have to work at achieving some more savings, but we've managed to maintain services at all levels, and I'm very proud of that. We still have the 23rd lowest council tax rate out of all the district councils, and I think I would like to thank the officers, head of financial services, the strategic director for their assistance over the year, and let's hope we have a lot better year next year. That's all I've got to say, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, so can I ask whether yes, if any councillors finish their item, by all means, please. Councillor Hajai Nikolai, if you wish to leave, absolutely, please do. Thank you very much. Okay, so can I ask whether there are any questions or any points that anyone wishes to raise with Councillor Berkeley or Simon or Leslie? So we have the queues open. So I'm going to move to Councillor Mercer to start off with, followed by Councillor Ratway. So Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Leader. I think Councillor Berkeley is quite right to congratulate Simon Jackson and his team for the excellent work they've done in managing this situation. I think we should also thank the government for the subsidies that we've received, and perhaps thank our great-grandchildren for ultimately paying for this this exercise. But what I'd like to ask Councillor Berkeley is, obviously Charnwood's contribution towards the council tax is only a small proportion, and would he agree that it's a little bit unfortunate when one sees the headline in the Loughborough Echo, which I will hold up, which creates the impression, forget it, right? It creates the impression, Leader, that it's largely our fault for the increase in the council tax and not the other authorities to which it goes.
Yeah, I think absolutely right. We are the collecting authority for Leicestershire County Council, the fire authority, the police. Our take of the budget is roughly 10% of what people are billed in the borough. We have the 23rd lowest council tax rate for a district council out of 187. We're increasing the council tax by £5 per year, which on a weekly basis is very, very negligible. We've maintained our focus on trying to keep reductions at an absolute minimum. We're actually capped at 2% or £5. Yeah, absolutely. I think very, very few people realise that when they get their council tax bill through the door, that actually the amount that we are precepting some of them is less than their parish council, and we are providing services throughout the whole borough. So yeah, when you keep in mind that Charnwood's share of council tax is 10% maximum, so I think it is very unfair for the Loughborough Echo to suggest that it was it's all down to Charnwood Council. Unfortunately, we are the billing authority, and many people mistakenly believe that it is all coming to us. Well, 90% of it is going elsewhere.
Thank you very much. Simon or Leslie, is there anything you actually want to add to that answer, or are you happy?
No, that's thank you, Leader. That's absolutely right. The proportion of the precept that relates directly to Charnwood is very, very limited. I suppose, strictly speaking, it does all come to us because we are the collecting authority, but obviously we have to repay it over pretty frequently, otherwise the major preceptors don't like that. So, but certainly, yeah, in terms of the numbers, the proportion of the council tax attributed to us is certainly not very significant.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've got a further question from Councillor Ratway, and then I saw Councillor Boker had her hand up as well. So Councillor Ratway, do you want to start?
Thank you, Leader. It's just on business rates collections. Obviously, for this financial year, you wouldn't have really been impacted on any sort of loss in collections because the most hard hit businesses, the retail, hospitality and leisure, had their business rates cancelled. I'm just slightly concerned over any loss in our collection rate in the coming year, given that we don't know what the business support is from April onwards. At the moment, it looks like business rates will continue, obviously otherwise, unless we hit otherwise in the budget. But have we got any concerns over that being a risk going forward?
Yeah, through you, Leader. Yeah, I think we have a collection fund where we balance it off year by year, either plus or minus. So we don't know what we're going to collect going ahead. And clearly, it is a concern in the middle of a pandemic how businesses will reignite and move forward. We've got concerns. We're in a business rates pool with all the other districts, so there is a certain amount of resilience there. But it's a very valid point, and I think everybody acknowledges that the business rate system, for many years, government has promised to review it, and I for one hope they do. And this may be an ideal opportunity to do so after we try to refire up businesses and commerce.
Thank you very much. Simon or Leslie, is there anything you wish to add to that one?
I'll just add, just briefly, thank you. I think Councillor Barker has explained that. I mean, I think certainly we have got concerns. Leslie and the team have been through in detail the business rate projections, and we have been, I believe, suitably prudent in our assessment, taking into account things like non-payment, so bad debts, if you like, empty property relief, which we would suffer from. So if businesses vacate premises, then they do get a period of empty property relief, and also the likelihood of appeals, which we have increased our rate of appeals relating to last year and this year and going forward, reflecting the impact of COVID and the fact that notional rental incomes should be reduced on the basis of current economic activity. So we have been, I hope, suitably prudent. There is a risk, and we would acknowledge that, and Councillor Rattrey is absolutely right with that. As I say, hopefully we have done a lot of work, and hopefully the numbers we've got in the budget are sufficiently prudent and robust as we move forward into 21-22.
Thank you very much. Councillor Boker, you had a question.
Yes, going back to the council tax, and maybe this has been considered, but we used to send out quite a lengthy explanation of council tax in bygone days, which we then stopped for cost reasons because it was less paper going into the envelope. but I'm just wondering, in these difficult times, reference COVID, etc., whether we shouldn't be putting something in with the council tax bill that tries to explain it in simple language as to why council tax is going up, and that we are merely the collectors and not the decision makers in this increase.
You will have a pleasant surprise when you open your council tax this year. In that case, Councillor Boker, there is in fact a leaflet going in. Yeah,
I think that there is a leaflet going in, and I think hopefully that will explain to people that our share is only 10%, and we are all right. We do collect all the money, but we have to pay it over to the other authorities, and obviously, county council set their own precept, the police set their own. And so do the fire authority, and we have no influence over that. The only thing we can influence is our own, and we've kept ours to a minimum for many, many years. But yes, I think it's a very good point. Thank you, Councillor Boker, and there will be something in there.
So I think I'd probably, are there any more questions that anyone wishes to ask? Because I know obviously we've been living with these documents for a considerable period of time now. Cabinet have well and truly seen the development of the budget and the MTFS. So for many people in Cabinet, I know this is something that they're very, very well experienced of. So the one point I think I'd probably like to tease out in the MTFS in particular, we clearly have a couple of statements in there, and this is probably a question to Simon and Leslie, really. We have a couple of statements in there in relation to obviously the unpredictability of our future funding in relation to government grants, particularly with the withdrawal of New Homes Bonus and what may actually replace it. I was on a call with, as many other people were, with the Secretary of State today, where again it was raised the fact that obviously the funding settlement for next year has not been set, that there is still a great deal of debate as to in what form it's going to be and how it's going to be set. Can I ask particularly about the timescales that you expect this settlement to actually come through? I'm assuming we're not going to just suddenly discover our settlement. I'm really hoping we aren't. That we're not going to suddenly just discover what our settlement is going to be this time next year, given the fact that we really do need to understand over this coming year precisely what our financial position is, because quite clearly from the MTFS in itself, it absolutely sets out how the national funding formula and whatever changes are coming through are going to have a dramatic effect on our ability to actually set a budget.
Thank you, Leader. If I have a go at answering that one. So the traditional timings are that the detailed settlement for Charnwood would come through around about alongside the autumn statement or just afterwards, which historically have been early on in December. There were moves actually recognising that the pressure this puts on councils to try and draw this a little bit earlier, but due to COVID in 2020 and where the government were on the sort of Brexit legislation in 2019, on both those years, the announcements were actually along fairly much in the traditional way in early December. So in the worst case scenario, we may not have an awful lot of idea of what our settlement is likely to be until next end of November, beginning of December 2021, which will make things difficult. We have actually today received the consultation on the New Homes Bonus and the future of that, which I think may give us a few clues, but obviously what we hope to find out is we will get clues and a clearer sense of direction as we move forward in the spring and the summer. So hopefully things will get a little bit clearer and now allow us to make a more educated guess of where we're going to be. But I was also on that call, and I must say one of the things that if the government are able to give us a multi-year settlement, that would be very much appreciated, because in terms of planning, it would be an enormous help to us.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, are there any other further questions? I know that particularly this budget has been an extremely difficult one to set. I know the office team worked very, very hard coming through with proposals for savings, and you know, of those items that came through, I think it's fair to say that you know, there were many items in the budget that are not necessarily preferred, but we do need to be able to set a budget that's affordable, and clearly, from as Councillor Barclay set out, the quantity of reserves that we're actually calling on, we can't keep on doing that, and as a result, the budget setting process will increasingly become challenging, especially if depending on the outcome of the funding settlement. So it is true that the budget, as it appears, contains items that are there to try and actually create a balanced approach, and the MTFS, I think, sets out the reasons why in the future that we're still going to face challenges. So are there any other questions, or otherwise I'm going to go back to Councillor Barclay to make a recommendation? Okay, no further questions. So back to you, Councillor Barclay.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to make recommendations 1 to 14 on pages 43 and 44 of the report, for the reasons 1 to 14 on page 44 and 45 of the report.
Thank you very much, and I'm happy to second that proposal. So I'm going to go through Cabinet and ask you to verbally say whether you're for, against, or otherwise. So I am for. Councillor Barclay.
For, Leader.
Councillor Bailey.
For, Leader.
Councillor Boker.
For, Leader.
Councillor Harper-Davies.
For, Leader.
Councillor Mercer.
For, Leader.
Councillor Poland.
For, Leader.
Councillor Ratway.
For, Leader.
Councillor Rawlings.
For, Leader.
And Councillor Smitovich.
For, Leader.
Okay, that's everyone. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for particularly to Councillor Hajrai Nicola, who I know has had to disappear off. So item 8, capital strategy. Councillor Barclay likewise is capital and investment strategy for 2021-2022. Councillor Barclay, can I ask you to introduce this item before we move through to any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. Very simply, this outlines how we manage our capital investments, our borrowing, our cash flow, and also our investments in various products to earn us interest, which is extremely low at the moment. The various parameters which we have to keep within are outlined in the report, and the various indicators which keep us within prudent limits of what we can and cannot do. It's a very comprehensive report. It goes into great details. It also gives an economic background. It is fairly self-explanatory. We are bound by it, and it has kept us very much on the straight and narrow over many, many years. And I think you will note within the report that we have not, we've indicated that we're not likely to do any more investment in commercial property at the moment. The government has ruled against that by not allowing us to borrow money from the Public Works Loan Board to invest in commercial property. We've actually taken that out of the Treasury Management Strategy and Capital Strategy, because otherwise, if anything else came up, which we wanted to borrow Public Works Loan Board money for, we would not be able to do it. So that's one of the reasons that we do it. But quite happy to answer any questions. We have Treasury advisors as well, linked asset services, so we are covered in most things, and we also have training for our officers to ensure that they know exactly what they're doing, and they do, because they frequently give me advice.
Thank you very much. Simon, would you like to add any further points?
Yes, please, Leader. So on Tuesday, we took the report to the Capital Strategy Audit Committee, as we're required to do as part of the governance process before the capital strategy gets approved by council, and there's a couple of points that they raised. So the first one, if I may, is just to they raised a typo. So if I may just refer that to Cabinet, and so we can potentially have that corrected before it goes to council. But on page 124, there's a reference there to the capital plan being subject to approval by council on the 9th of November. In fact, it was approved on the 9th of November, so it'll just be a correction within that document to refer to the past tense rather than a prospective future event. We did discuss, in addition, we did discuss at actually quite some length at the audit committee meeting the implications of removing the details related to commercial investment properties. Councillor Barclay said, it just as an aside really, in addition to the government message relating to the Public Works Loan Board, there's also a change to the Prudential Code, which we are being consulted upon, but that gives a very clear sense of direction that not only will we not be able to use commercial loan, not only be unable to use Public Works Loan Board money to fund the commercial property investments in future, but we will not be allowed to borrow from any source, either internal or external borrowing to fund commercial property investments in future. So that's a consultation, but as is the case with many of these government consultations, the direction is very, very clear on that. But arising from removing it from the capital strategy, the audit committee queried the fact that in removing all details of our potential capital commercial property investment, we've taken out those hurdle rates and the parameters by which we might invest. So things like rate of return, where we would invest, types of property, etc., which were in previous iterations of the capital strategy. So notwithstanding the fact that if we were ever to relaunch a commercial property investment program, it would have to go back through the audit committee. They were keen that that removal of that set of parameters was something they wanted to draw to your attention. And following the meeting, I'm going to read these out if I may. There was an agreed set of recommendations from audit committee to Cabinet, and Laura will correct me if I get this wrong all round my neck, but that the capital plan be noted and the recommendations to Cabinet and to Council be supported subject to Resolution 2 below, and Resolution 2 that Cabinet be asked to note the Audit Committee's concern about the removal of the measurement criteria relating to future investment in commercial property. And the reasons for that are, one, to acknowledge the committee's consideration of the item, and two, to ensure Cabinet are aware of the removal of these criteria, and that if they are reinstated at any point in the future, a formal approval process will be required, which should involve the audit committee. But as I say, the way the constitutional rules are set at the moment is that any reinstatement of commercial property investment would indeed require a route through audit committee, as is the case at the moment. So hopefully that made a little bit of sense. If Laura maybe waves at me to see if I've got that right, or whether she would like to add something.
Yeah, that just boils down to an additional recommendation for the Cabinet to consider, which I've set up for Councillor Barclay, but it's the same as that recommendation and reason that you've said, Simon.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Rawlings, following on from that, I think you have a question relevant.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. So I understand the issues we have with investment now, and I think in essence what we're saying is we're not likely to be able to invest further in commercial property. We've done a huge amount of work in not a lot of time to invest £23 million, which is great. You know, a massive amount of work's gone into that, and I'm very grateful for it. I think my concern is by removing the parameters from this strategy now, what happens to the existing £23 million that we've invested? Because we've put that money into commercial property that in theory we could sell, we could make more money if we sell some of those properties and then want to reinvest without having to reborrow, or can we not do that? Because my concern is, say we sell one of those assets, say we sell property and make, I don't know, we sell it for £10 million. Are we able to reinvest that straight away, or would we have to pay off borrowing, and then that means we couldn't then use that money any further because the money's in essence gone? Or are we able to reinvest money that we've made? And if so, how do we do that when we've just taken away the criteria that we would have otherwise applied to that investment? That's the concern I've got. I feel like we've almost missed a slight loophole there, where if we were to deal with the existing £23 million we've got, what criteria do we apply to that?
Simon.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So at the moment, legislatively and rules wise, we're in very much a grey area. So certainly in terms of the Prudential Code, which is out for consultation now, but which the consultation period ends on the 12th of April, so relatively soon, it's a very difficult and grey area. If we needed to sell something, I don't think that's a problem. So if a commercial opportunity arose and we needed to sell something, I think that would be absolutely fine. Could we sell something and then reinvest? I think that is something, quite frankly, I couldn't say one way or another with any confidence. I would assume that if we sold something for 10 million and bought something else for 6 million, for example, that would be perfectly acceptable. But I couldn't actually say that was a certainty at the moment. If we wanted to, so the reason for removing it from the capital strategy, and the plan is to remove the reference from the capital plan at the next capital plan amendment report, is just to make it very clear and have a document trail that if we do want to access Public Works Loan Board money for forward funding of the enterprise zone or for regeneration purposes, which are two other very large amounts of money earmarked in the capital plan, there should be no doubt within our extant document set that commercial property was not something we were going to be considered. So therefore we could access PWLB loan board money. If we wanted to restart the commercial property investment, then we always have a mechanism to do that by bringing a report through Cabinet, Audit Committee and Council, which is not very quick, but not necessarily very quick, but we can actually do that at any point in time. So if we did want to restart commercial property investment, then we can do that. I think our assumptions really is that's not something we're going to want to do within the 21-22 financial year, and it's something we can naturally consider for the next iteration of the capital strategy. But if somehow opportunities arose and we did want to do something more rapidly than that, then it is something we can do in line with the council meeting. So it doesn't tie our hands completely, but what we've done is try to make things clear in our document set to enable us to access PWLB money should we need it for some of the other things and other plans we have within the capital plan. So a little bit uncertain, but we're not tying our hands completely is the sort of summary of my answer there, I think.
Thanks a lot. Justin, do you want to come in at that point?
Thank you, Leader. Just to add a little bit of comfort to Simon's answer, it's very highly unlikely over the course of the next 12 months that we would want to dispose of any of the properties that we have at the moment anyway. So we do have time to consider that. And as Simon said, with a fairly quick resolution, we could update that if we needed to.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any further questions? Councillor Poland.
Thank you. Just on that last point, again, just from my understanding, if purely hypothetically we did wish to sell one of the buildings in the next 12 months, is that a decision that would have to come to us as Cabinet, or is that a lead officer with lead member decision?
Justin.
You're muted, Justin. You're muted.
Thank you, Councillor Barclay. Councillor Poland, if we want to dispose of any property currently, constitutionally and within our own contract procedure rules, it is a cabinet level decision to first declare the property surplus to requirement, to authorize a sale, and then to accept a bid. So there is still that process and mechanism already. It's the same. We would treat it the same as we would treat any piece of land or any property within the borough.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any further questions that anyone has? Nope, I can't see any other hands up. So I'm going to pass back to Councillor Barclay to make the recommendations, including the additional recommendation and reason for. Councillor Barclay.
I'd like to make recommendations 1 to 3 on page 94, and in addition, another recommendation as outlined by Simon Jackson, that the audit committee concern about the removal of the measurement criteria relating to future investment in commercial property is noted. And I would like to make those recommendations for the reasons 1 to 3 on page 94, and also for the final 4th reason, to ensure Cabinet are aware of the removal of the criteria, and that if they are reinstated at any point in the future, a formal approval process will be required, which should involve the audit committee. And that's been quite clear tonight of everything, the way we will have to do it. So
thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Rawlings, would you like to second?
Thank you, Leader. I'm happy to second this item.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to ask all of you in that case on Cabinet whether you are for the proposal or otherwise. So I will start by saying I'm for the proposal. Councillor Barclay.
For, Leader.
Councillor Bailey.
For, Leader.
Councillor Boker.
For, Leader.
Councillor Harper-Davies.
For, Leader.
Councillor Mercer.
For, Leader.
Councillor Poland.
For, Leader.
Councillor Rackway.
For, Leader.
Councillor Rawlings.
For, Leader.
Councillor Smitovich.
For, Leader.
Thank you very much. I think that's everyone. So that item is agreed. Thank you very much. So we're now on to item 9, which is the Strategic Risk Register for 2021-2022. We've got obviously still Simon Jackson here to support, and also Helen Gretton, who's our Organisational Development Manager. So I'm going to ask Councillor Smitovich to open with a brief resume, and then we'll open to questions. Thank you very much.
Before I actually start the report, I must say I'm very grateful for Helen Gretton for the time she took with me to go through this, because I had quite a few questions of her, as you could imagine, but a very clear understanding by the time she'd finished with me. So the proposed Strategic Risk Register for 21-22 has been produced following considerable consultation amongst the officers at various levels. But I would like to draw your attention particularly to the additional risks that are included in the register, namely the environmental bill and the COVID-19 risk register. And to note that it's been very carefully cross-referenced with the Strategic Risk Register, but it is an amended document. So I don't know if it's Helen's going to answer any questions you have.
I suspect so. So Helen, is there anything that you wish to add to that before we open up for any questions?
No, thank you, Leader. I think Councillor Smitovich gave a good overview there.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, are there any questions that anyone wishes to ask? Councillor Mercer, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Leader. I have actually, as I'm sure we all have, read this report. And one question I had, just as to perhaps clarify the process, is how you actually assess risk. And if you take flooding, for instance, those of us who have lived in Loughborough for many years know that every year you get some flooding. Roughly every decade you get some serious flooding, and then every perhaps twice a century, and if you look back historically, you get some fairly catastrophic flooding. And that happened about 30 years ago, and I checked with Councillor Smitovich to confirm that I was right, and she remembers it as well, when what happened was the snow suddenly melted very quickly and there was phenomenal flooding. And what we also know, and so the first question is how do you objectively assess that as a risk? Because you know that it's going to be one day a horrific amount of flooding that's going to take place, but that may not happen for half a century. And the second is that looking at the data that the government produces from its flood warning information service, if you actually compare that to what actually happens, there are in many parts of the town and of the borough, there's no resemblance at all. And a good example of that is the land beyond Brush going to Coates, which very recently looked like Slimbridge, with swans happily swimming in large lakes. But if you look at the government data, there's no evidence of flooding in that area at all. So the second part of the question is, do you actually take what we know to be the case, anecdotally evidence of where risk occurs or doesn't occur, or do you actually have to follow what the relevant government departments are telling us?
Helen.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Mercer. I think I can answer certainly part of that. So in relation to risk management, it's obviously dynamic. It requires ongoing review. We manage and monitor risk based on likelihood and impact. And in the risk registers, you will see those, both the residual and the inherent risk. In relation specifically to flooding, we would have notice of a major or a significant flood through our own intelligence or that of our relationship with partners such as the Resilience Forum or the Environment Agency. In terms of our response, we would act proportionately, probably erring on the side of caution. We would engage with relevant services. We would stand up tasking groups, as we did a couple of weeks ago when there were yellow flood warnings across the borough. We would follow the LRF flood plan. Obviously, they have links into government and wider agencies. And we would, if necessary, through that link, we would be able to seek mutual aid. Following an incident, we would review the lessons learned. So the likelihood and impact is based on previous experience that we have witnessed elsewhere. And indeed, the Environment Agency based their flood models on experience. So we would use that model to assess as a risk. And I think that probably answers the first part of your question, Councillor Mercer. In relation to tapping into or using government information, I believe that would come through through the LRF. I don't know if colleagues have got anything further that they want to add to that.
Rob
Leader,
Mitchell.
Yeah,
Yep.
Thank you, Leader. So just to add to Helen's response there, we do get a set of maps from the Environment Agency, which are updated regularly in terms of what they believe the flooding risk areas are. At a local level, we also get advice and guidance from the EA and Met Office as and when we think there are flooding events might be likely. And that will use river gauges and other methods to sort of say where we think we might see some river flooding, or if there is surface water flooding. Then we quite often use our own experience and that of our colleagues in the County Council in regards to areas around Loughborough, and I'm sure some members could name them because they will see it happen frequently. And that's where we will task some of our teams to go out and do sandbagging and support for residents in advance of any likely flooding. So it's probably a mix of the two. We use the government models, we use the measurements we get from the EA and other authorities, but we also use a bit of our local knowledge and experience as to what we think might happen locally based on our experience. We tend to follow names such as Brook Road or names like that tend to give us a clue as to where we might get some flooding. So there's obviously names in the history of places as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, if there are no further questions, I'm going to ask Councillor Smidovic to sum up and recommendation, if that's okay. Councillor Smidovic.
I think I'm off mute, yes. Yes, the report proposes an updated strategic risk register for your approval. I think the 3 recommendations are clearly outlined. It does have to come before the audit committee on a regular basis. And I think the reasons also support the recommendations. And I would ask for your approval for this new updated strategic risk register.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So there's the 3 recommendations and 3 reasons on page 159. And I'm going to ask Councillor Bailey whether you're happy to second.
Thank you, Leader. I'm happy to second this item.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to go through everyone again, say whether you're for or otherwise for the proposal. So I'm going to start by saying I'm for. Councillor Berkeley.
For, Leader.
Councillor Bailey.
For, Leader.
Councillor Boker.
For, Leader.
Councillor Harper-Davies.
For, Leader.
Councillor Mercer.
For, Leader.
Councillor Poland.
For, Leader.
Councillor Ratway.
For, Leader.
Councillor Rollings.
For, Leader.
Councillor Smitovich.
Yes, for, Leader.
Thank you very much. That's everyone. So that item is agreed. Thank you very much to Helen, particularly for supporting. Right, we're now on to item 10, which is RIPA, Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act Policy and Use. We have with us Adrian Ward, who's the Head of Strategic Support, to assist. And Councillor Smitovich, it's with you again, if you'd like to briefly introduce the item before we can open up to any questions.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Yes, I have pleasure in, once again, the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act Policy and Review of Use during 2020, and to approve the Act for our use for the following year, 2021.
Thank you very much. Okay, are there any points, Adrian, that you wish to add before we open up to any questions?
Nothing to add, Leader, thank you, but obviously we'll try and answer any questions.
Okay, will do. Now, are there any questions? Councillor Poland, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, just a relatively quick one. I was at Housing Management Advisory Board last week, and we had quite a somewhat detailed conversation about the use of noise monitoring in antisocial behaviour cases. So whereby you go to a house and then you record any potential noise from a neighbour. But one of the things that was brought up about those circumstances is we have to tell the neighbour in question that we're recording them. And the question was asked, I think, by a member there, I can't remember which one, might have been Brenda, but it was to why we can't use RIPA effectively to not have to tell the neighbour, on the basis that obviously if you know you're being recorded, you're less likely to be antisocial.
Thank you, Councillor Poland. I think the simple answer to that is to be able to use RIPA and covert surveillance, there has to be a criminal offence punishable by a prison sentence for 6 months or more. And in antisocial behaviour noise cases, that's probably not applicable. And also, as well as an internal authorisation process, we have to go before a magistrate before we can implement a RIPA authorisation and use covert surveillance. So it would have to be an offence punishable by at least a 6-month prison sentence, and we would also have to persuade a magistrate that it's proportionate to not tell a neighbour that we were monitoring the noise coming from their property.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that. Are there any further
Yes, Jonathan.
questions? Councillor Smitovich.
Yes, I think page 179 and 180. I was going to draw your attention to this and my machine went off when I was introducing it. But I do think 179 and 180 are particularly helpful for outlining what we can and what we can't do. And particularly, I'm sure our monitoring officer gets quite wary of me bringing this up, but paragraph 6 talks about the offences that would meet the conditions for us to introduce RIPA and to put it into effect. Anything that attracts 6 months or more imprisonment, and I believe fines. I think it was, I can't remember the level of the fine, but for fly tipping particularly, I mean, you can go up to something like £50,000. So it's quite a lot of money. And I think, you know, the report is very clear as to what should be done in-house and the procedures to be followed. Admittedly, it can't be taken lightly. But I think the easiest part of all of it is getting it before a magistrate. And It's simply heard in a retiring room. It's not in full court. You're asked various questions and you have to take an oath, the person presenting it. And usually all the hard work's been done before it comes to a magistrate, whether it's in the court or in a house, which I have done many times at home quite late at night. So it can be done, but I don't think we ever have had recourse to it, but it is there for when we need it. So that's my only comment, Leader.
Adrian, is there anything else you wish to add?
Just for absolute clarity, Leader, we have used it in the past, but not for many, many years. And the main reason we used to use RIPA authorisations was when we had responsibility for investigating housing benefit fraud. That no longer sits with us. That now sits with the DWP, which is probably the main reason why we use it far less frequently than we did many years ago.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, if there are no further questions, then I'm going to ask Councillor Smitovich to sum up and move the recommendations and the reasons.
Right, thank you. So to approve, I would ask you to approve the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, known as RIPA, and to consider the summary of the use of RIPA during 2020 for the recommendations 1 to 3 and the reasons outlined 1 to 3. So I would put that before you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to ask Councillor Harper-Davies, would you like to second?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'd like to second this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to go through everyone again. If you could say whether you're for or otherwise. So I'm for this. Councillor Barclay.
For, Leader.
Councillor Bailey.
For, Leader.
Councillor Boker.
For, Leader.
Councillor Harper-Davies.
For, Leader.
Councillor Mercer.
For, Leader.
Councillor Poland.
For, Leader.
Councillor Ratway.
Yeah.
Councillor Rollings, sorry.
For, Leader.
Councillor Smitovich.
For, Leader.
And that's everyone. Okay, thank you very much. So we're now down to item 11, which is urgent decisions taken. You've seen the paper that is under item 11, which relates to decision taken by under delegated powers. Again, it sets out in relation to what it is, which is in relation to the emergency grants scheme to businesses. So if there are any questions related to that, by all means, if any councillors can raise their hands. Otherwise, hopefully the paper is extremely clear. And I know Cabinet had an informal session previously setting out what we were likely to be presented with. So I don't see any hands up. So what we need to do, I need to summarize, which I have done, and move the officer, get my teeth in, officer recommendation and the reasons given on page 198, which I now do. And if I can ask Councillor Boker to second the recommendation and reason given as on page 198.
Thank you, Leader. I'm happy to second this item.
Okay, thank you very much. So again, if I can go through everyone, I'll just ask whether you're for or otherwise. So I'm for Councillor Barclay.
For, Leader.
Councillor Bailey.
For, Leader.
Councillor Boker.
For, Leader.
Councillor Harper-Davies.
For, Leader.
Councillor Mercer.
For, Leader.
Councillor Poland. Councillor Poland.
Yes. Jeremy?
Thank you. I can now. That's perfect.
News.
Councillor Ratway.
For, Leader.
Councillor Rawlings.
For, Leader.
Councillor Smitovich.
For, Leader.
That's brilliant. That's everyone. Thank you very much. Item 11 is agreed. So we're now down to the final two items. The second from last is to agree exempt information before we move on to the very last item. So item 12 is proposed to exclude members of the public from the meeting during the consideration of the following item on the grounds that it will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 and 5 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972. And it is considered that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So I am proposing that. Councillor Barclay, would you be happy to second that?
I'm happy to second that, Leader.
Thank you very much. And again, I'm going to ask whether you're for or otherwise. So I am for that proposal. Councillor Barclay.
For, Leader.
Councillor Bailey.
For, Leader.
Councillor Boker.
For, Leader.
Councillor Harper Davies.
For, Leader.
Councillor Mercer.
For, Leader.
Councillor Poland.
For, Leader.
Councillor Ratway.
For, Leader.
Councillor Rawlings.
For, Leader.
Councillor Smitovich.
For, Leader.
Okay, that's everyone. Thank you very much. That's item agreed. So I need to ask and pause at this point.
Thank you. I'm just